Hello, welcome to Lunchtime Live. I'll wait until I see a couple of comments so I know that you guys are all here. The helicopters are pretty loud. We are overlooking the Tide Channel. And today, well, let's see if you can see there they are. There's some snowy egrets, and a little further, I don't think you'd be able to see it, but it's a yellow-crowned night heron. Unfortunately, we're talking about western grebes, and there aren't any today. I'm so disappointed. I swear they know if I'm going to talk about them, and they go hide. Hi, Anne-Marie. Okay, so today we are talking about western grebes. And western grebes, they have a folk name called the swan grebe. And when I show you pictures, eventually you'll kind of get why they have that folk name. They are the largest of the grebes. And there's a grebe that looks a whole lot like the western grebe, and that is a Clark's grebe. And I'll show you how to tell the difference. Let me show you a picture. So this is the western grebe. You can see he's got that beautiful black and white pattern, and kind of a yellow greenish beak, red eyes. The difference between a western grebe and a Clark's grebe is, see how the black goes below the eye in a western? If this were a Clark's, it would go above the eye. So that's how you tell the difference. Otherwise, they look pretty much the same. We have other kinds of grebes here as well. We have pied grebes and we have eared grebes. But today we're just talking about the western grebe. I wanted to show you a close-up of their feet. So grebes are waterfowl, like ducks, but you know, ducks have webbed feet, and grebes have these cool lobed feet. Coots have lobed feet too. The coots have kind of greenish lobed feet though, and these are yellow. Hi Robert, hi Anne. So, again, here's the picture. So as far as habitat goes, during the breeding season, they breed elsewhere. They breed on lakes and ponds, in Western North America. And then they migrate to the coastal bays and estuaries in the winter. So they are winter migrants. And a lot of times here you'll see them over at the brackish ponds. And also you can see them on the bay a lot because they do like that salty water. And so shallow bays, estuaries, brackish ponds, that's where you're gonna see them. And as far as behavior, you're not gonna see, it's rare that you would ever see a grebe flying because they migrate at night. And you're also not gonna see them out walking around because their legs are positioned far back on their bodies. And so when they walk like out to their nest or something, they look like there's something wrong with them. I mean, that's what you would think. They're not meant to walk, they're waterfowl. And so they are kind of clumsy on their nest, I'd say. But mostly you are going to see them in the water. And one of the cool things that they do, they tuck their wings in really tight and they can dive super deep. And hi Mark. Hi, Joyce. And so they dive deep, but they can also dive down just like a periscope. You know, like, I don't know if you ever saw Austin Powers when he was doing that. Anyway, that's what they do. Like periscopes or really deep dives. And the reason that they dive deep is they are carnivores. What they eat is fish. And they have this, you know, super sharp beak that they impale their fish. They also eat marine worms and aquatic insects, stuff like that. And another thing about grebes is they are gregarious. And in this case, it means that they nest in colonies. And when they're here, they are often seen in flocks. So they're not usually by themselves, so sometimes they are. But here is the most famous thing about, the most interesting thing about grebes, is they have a courtship that is very precise and looks kind of like bird ballet. And especially because they're kind of a slender, elegant bird. And when they're doing it, you get the opportunity to see their head look kind of peaked or their crown raised. So the first courtship ceremony is called rushing. And it has some different parts to it. It starts where they lower themselves into the water and kind of raise that crest and stretch up their throat and call to each other. So that's called like advertising. Some people also just call it ratchet pointing. And I think advertising might be better. And then they do like a dip shaking where they dip their head into the water, they dip their bill, and they shake their head back and forth. And then finally, they do the actual rushing. And what it is both male and female get side by side, and they literally walk on water, only they run. And let me show you a picture. That is what it looks like. So they curve their long neck. So you can kind of see why their nickname is swan grebe. But they race across the water really fast, side by side, very precise. And then at the end of that, they dive into the water. So sometimes two males will do this. It's not always male and a female. And then they have a second ceremony later after they are with another bird that's, you know, they're a mated pair. And this is called the weed ceremony. This is actually kind of my favorite. They stretch their neck, you know, bob their heads. They dive down and they grab some weeds. And so they've got a beak full of weeds, and they sort of pivot and spiral around each other. And they caress each other with aquatic vegetation. So I would love to see all of this, and I never have. So that's called the weed ceremony, and it's later when they're a mated pair. Hi, John. Hi, Shirley. And Brother Phil. Okay, so nesting. Like I said, they're gregarious. They nest in colonies. Colonies can be like 100 birds. But again, you're not going to get to see that here. But what happens is the males choose the site, and when they build the nest, because the males are bigger and have bigger beaks, they bring, you know, the big sticks and all of that. And then the female kind of cements it together with wet vegetation like algae. And they usually make their nest right on the edge of the water and then anchor it to one of the plants. And both parents take a turn. And so the one that's on the nest, the other one will bring food to it. So it doesn't have to leave the nest. So the other one will bring food, and the other one will be the territorial one that chases things away. And grebes kind of work together. So any grebes that are still single, they will actually help out and help protect the nests and work together. And then the parents will switch places, and the female and male are equally territorial, and equal time on the nests and equal time feeding each other. So the eggs they lay like 2 to 3 eggs, and they're blue, but they're always stained. And I think they're stained from, the wet vegetation. So they have like a little brown stain on them. It's like a 24-day incubation period. And when the babies are born, they're precocial, which means they're, ready to go. They have a silvery down covering and a little bald spot on the top of their head. And they get on the parents' backs, which is super cute. And I have another picture of that. Here they are. So you can see how pretty and silvery they are. Now, these are getting kind of big, and so they don't have that bald spot on their head anymore. And the fledglings, like when they're riding on the back of the parents, if the parents make like a little ticking noise, and that warns the babies to hide, and they hide on her back underneath her feathers. Now, when they get as big as the picture that I showed you, they jump off and run for cover, because they were a little big to hide under the feathers. As far as predators go, you're going to notice when you're out walking and you see dead birds and bones that a lot of times it's a grebe. And one of the reasons that it's a grebe is because they come down like the Pacific Flyway or wherever they're coming from, and they're very dependent upon water stops, right? And maybe they stop places that aren't so great, like some silage pit or whatever water they can find. Other birds don't necessarily have to do that because they eat more things, and because these are carnivores, they really need that water. And so that's part of it. The other part of it is after breeding season, they molt. So they drop all of their feathers, all of their flight feathers, and then, they're really vulnerable to predation. So that's why you're often going to see dead grebes more than other things. At least that's been my experience. They're very sensitive birds, so they're bothered by human disturbance. And, of course, there's habitat destruction, that can be a problem. And, back in the day, thank heavens this doesn't happen anymore, but in the 20th century, tens of thousands of them were killed for their plumage, for the hat industry, just like the snowy egrets. So, and probably a lot of other birds. But, they're pretty prevalent now. They're doing pretty well. But those would be the main problems that they have. And that's about all I've got on grebes. Let me show you again the western grebe. Again, the Clark's grebe, the black would be above the eye. And that, we don't usually have, I've never seen a Clark's grebe. We have western grebes, pied grebes, eared grebes. There's the grebe feet, one more time, lobed feet. And here's the rushing ceremony. I don't have a picture of the weed ceremony. I think that would need to be a video to see them spiraling around each other, rubbing weeds on each other. And here's the babies riding on their mama. So if you're ever near ponds during the breeding season, you'll be able to see some of those ceremonies. But here, you're just gonna see them hanging out, eating weeds. Mark says that that we do have Clarks, but they're far less common than Western. And I haven't seen any here, but that doesn't mean that they're not here. And now you know how to tell the difference. So, okay, I believe Maria is going to be talking next, and she is going to talk at our next Lunchtime Live about the widgeons, the American, is that right? American widgeons. She's here. American widgeons. So stay tuned for that. And now we're every other week. Remember that. Okay. Bye, everybody. Bye, Mark. Bye, Joyce.